So not too long ago, I did a review of the SmallRig cage for the GH5, and I thought that cage was amazing. That is until SmallRig launched the cage for the Panasonic Lumix GH6. So this is the cage for the Panasonic Lumix GH6. Now honestly, this is probably the best cage that SmallRig has ever made. And I'm going to take you through the reasons why I believe it's such a great cage and why you should probably get your hands on one of these if you are a new Lumix GH6 owner. Now what's pretty cool about this cage is it's part of the SmallRig Black Mamba series. So it comes with a handle which is an exclusive to the cage. It's one of SmallRig's handles, which is the Black Mamba handle. Now I'm going to take you through each different part of this that it comes with and basically give you a rundown. So starting with the cage, it's extremely light, but what makes this one a lot different from the normal cages that you get is it's not the normal black that you get. It kind of matches in with the texture that you get on the rubbers on the Lumix GH6 and most cameras that you get nowadays. So where you would see the grip in the front, that kind of texture has been kind of transferred through a paint kind of splatter look onto the actual metal body, call it the chassis of the SmallRig cage. So I'm going to start at the coolest point of this cage, and that is the grip where it wraps around close to the shutter button. Now honestly, the way you hold this cage, it just feels extremely comfortable in the hand. SmallRig has got this carbon fiber looking insert that kind of just wraps around, making the transition from the cage into the actual grip very, very smooth, unlike the old NATO rails that they used to have, and you had this clunky kind of feel. So holding this honestly feels better than holding the GH6 on its own. On the same side as well, you do have a few quarter screws as well as a RE locating pin mount. You do also have a strap mount on the top and the bottom that could be used, and there is actually one on this side as well, in case you do want to use this with some form of neck strap or a hand strap. And looking at the top where the buttons are, it's completely accessible. A lot of cages do come over here, kind of giving you that protection or mounting points. However, what SmallRig has done over here is they've really opened up the section, and in front of the shutter button, the way they've created this extra little lip here kind of helps your finger just lie in front of the shutter button. So if you do use this to record like I do, you know, you could record and just rest your finger over here, or if you do use your camera as a hybrid, which I do too, it is great for photography because it just feels very, very good in the hand. Sticking on the same side, you'll see over here by the battery door, there's this extra little grip. Now most people nowadays complain about mirrorless cameras being far too small. The problem is that your hand doesn't actually fit on the grip due to the fact that they're trying to make camera bodies smaller and smaller. So what SmallRig has done over here, they've given you this extra little point to kind of hold, and it's quite nice because your pinky sits underneath it and kind of holds the body up a bit. It's very, very comfortable to hold it like this as opposed to trying to hold the GH6 just like this. And then moving to the top, you do have an RE locating pin as well with a whole bunch of quarter screw mounts. So if you do want to put a flat NATO rail on there, it is possible, or as the camera comes with, the Black Mamba is RE locating, which I'm going to get to shortly. And then going around to the left hand side, you do have a cold shoe over here, and then down into this side you have a bunch of mounting points from 3/8 screws to RE locating, as well as a NATO rail. Now the NATO rail cannot slide past a certain point going up, so if your handle is there and it does slip loose, it will hook going up, but you can just slip it off the bottom. Just keep in mind that with the GH5, the RE locating pins was up at the top and this is at the bottom. So when you do put your side handle on, the mount will be over here, just in front of the HDMI port. And then moving down into the side over here, you do have these two mounting points. Now the cage actually does come with a HDMI and USB-C lock-in mechanism to tighten it. Now what is really cool with these, you don't really have to worry about how you position it, because as you tighten the screw, you'll actually see that it shifts and kind of squashes that HDMI port into the USB-C port, just to kind of make sure that it doesn't move out. And the reason that you'd want something like this is if you are using HDMI out into an external monitor and recording, you don't want to have that glitch over there that the HDMI port just actually slips out while you're recording. Also because Panasonic is launching an update for the GH6 to record to USB-C out, so you can record ProRes 5.7K. If you are recording via USB-C to your SSD, you don't want that USB-C to slip out of the port while you're recording. And that leads me to another thing with this NATO rail. You do have 1, 2, and 3 options on the GH6. The problem with this button over here that not a single YouTuber or reviewer has spoken about is if you do not have a cage on this and you do happen to shoot like this with a lens, or you hold it, whether it be photography or video work, you will push this record button multiple times in a session. I've showed a client something on the screen and accidentally hit record. I've hit record while I've just got it down by my side and check back and see that I'm actually recording. Honestly, this button is quite problematic, and you can actually see it due to the fact that Panasonic has created a little bit of a lip on the outside to kind of stop people from pushing it, I think. However, it doesn't really work too well, but this cage stops that completely. This cage makes the GH6 a far better handling device than it is already. And one of the coolest parts about this cage is going underneath, you actually have a Arca Swiss plate built in underneath. So the cage that came out before for the GH5 never had an Arca Swiss plate. It just had a whole bunch of mounting points, which this does too. You do have RE locating as well as quarter screw as well as a 3/8. It is pretty cool to have this integrated into it. You now don't have to mount a plate on you if you are using Arca Swiss. You'll also find that on the front over here, just below the lens, you do have those two little mounting points. If I'm not mistaken, these are for your 50mm rods, mounting rails. Some people actually use it for your speed boosters to actually screw them in. It just depends what this is used for in your case scenario. One thing to note, it does come with an extra little tool, and this tool is used to obviously tighten the main bolt in at the bottom, or use the little Allen key for this little mounting point over here. Now these mounting points are great. It doesn't have the camera shift from side to side. It is essentially using the same mounting points that you would mount your strap to. The GH5 did have this, but the GH5 had it both sides. This just has it one side. Just keep in mind that if you are going to try and loosen your Black Mamba handle with this, which is what they usually recommend you do, this is extremely weak and mine is already broken, as you can see. Luckily, it broke on a point where it's still using the Allen key or Allen wrench, whatever you call it, and I can still utilize mine. Then moving into the inside of the cage is pretty cool. So the GH6 does mount onto a rubber base, so it stops it from slipping. However, if you look underneath here where you would normally have your pop-up flash on a camera, they've added an extra bit of rubber just underneath there. I'm not too sure if it's just due to the fact that, you know, sometimes cameras rub over there. I mean, there is a large enough gap over there, but around the finger point and on the side over here where it does fit very, very tight to the body to give you that wraparound feel, they've added some rubber over there so that the cage doesn't scratch the chassis of the GH6. And then moving up into the Black Mamba handle. Now the handle is pretty cool. One thing that no one really points out is underneath the Black Mamba handle, it's actually rubber. Now most top handles are solid metal and they are pretty cold to the touch and they don't have a very great feel to them. However, the Black Mamba handle is probably the best handle that I've actually held. Now it is an RE locating pin, as I mentioned, and it's got an RE locating pin on the front as well as midway and a few quarter screws. It also has one of these cold shoe little levers so that if you do use one of those monitor mounts that are cold shoe and not RE locating, that it doesn't just slip out. The problem is with using a cold shoe mount on this is that you'll see I don't have the largest of hands, but if you do grip it, it's almost as if the monitor is too far back and the handle's too short. So I would highly recommend, if you are going to be looking at this and you don't already have a cold shoe mount, rather get an RE locating pin, mount your monitor to the front. Your whole rig will feel a lot more balanced. In saying that, if you are looking at building a rig, I did make a video which you can find over here on how to build an ultimate rig, and this wasn't just based on my rig, but it's how to think out of the box when building your own rig so that your rig is better. So that's it for the Black Mamba GH6 kind of cage series combo. It does come all together and it's pretty cool. I will drop a link in the description below if you do want to pick one up or just check it out. But honestly, if you do have a GH6, this is a no-brainer. Once it's on here, you can barely feel that it's actually on the body, and the only time that you do feel that it's on the body is just purely due to the fact that the ergonomics are actually better than the camera itself. I will be building up a rig on the GH6 with a couple of extra parts that I am waiting for, so make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on the notification bell so you can see it when I'm done with it. That's it from me. Wherever you are in the world, have a good day, good evening, good night, goodbye.